Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of KYB, the series of interviews where we highlight and we interview builders from the space. Today we have Getty from GFX Labs, and we're here to discuss about Oku. Getty, great to have you. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me this morning. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's start with a quick introduction of who you are and what GFX Labs is before we dive more into Oku.
Yeah. So we started GFX about almost 4 years ago. It'll be 4 years and just about a month. And before that, my co-founder and I spent 3.5 years working for a Chicago prop trading firm. They had traditional stuff there, but we actually sat on the crypto side as they were getting that started back in. It was like May of 2018 when we kind of took the full leap and went full time into this crazy industry that we've now been in ever since. And so that's really where we got our start. Like we were trading back then, everything on centralized exchanges, right? Like DeFi wasn't really much of a thing in 2018 at that point. And then it wasn't really until Compound V1 came about where I was like, oh wow, DeFi is really interesting. Stable coins weren't really a thing then. There was no such thing as a stable coin at that time, other than like Tether beginning to come out and exist, but it wasn't on Ethereum yet. It wasn't in DeFi anywhere. And then we got into MakerDAO, got very into Maker, started doing on-chain activity, doing lots of LP. And so what's been kind of fun is we started off on the market making and liquidity side of things, being a big LP in DeFi, doing stuff on centralized exchanges as well. And then started doing governance stuff, which is really how folks, I think, on the GFX side is our biggest brand. Whether that being, historically it was Compound where we started, and then Uniswap, and we've tacked on ever since today. I think most folks know us for Uniswap delegation or Optimism or Arbitrum were quite popular too, historically MakerDAO. And then fast forward to now present day where we actually spend most of our time building products, and that being like Oku, which is by far our biggest product and biggest brand that we have underneath the umbrella here at the company. So yeah, that's kind of like the super high level overview of condensed, I don't know, multiple 7 years of whatever this crazy industry is.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit more about Oku. Firstly, do I pronounce it correctly? Is it Oku?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Oku. Yeah, we started Oku. I mean, it's been in development essentially for 3 years because there was like 9-10 months of us building it before we even launched the thing. Oku's really trying to solve this core problem that is, why is everyone still using Binance all the time and these centralized exchanges? Like, we're in this industry that's supposed to represent trustlessness, decentralization, the frontier of technology, yet we're the vast majority of business is still occurring on these Web 2 systems that, other than the assets inside them, really have not much to do with crypto. And so this is the core thing that we've been working on, is how do we close this gap? The user experience of a Coinbase, Binance, decentralized exchanges is a lot better than anything in DeFi. I mean, it shouldn't shock people. Like Coinbase alone has probably spent more money in optimizing the user experience than the collective of every single DeFi project. I mean, right, it's a huge organization, 4,000 plus people, Binance, 7,000 folks. Like, these are massive organizations. But the thing that we have that they don't have is the DeFi Lego thesis, which I think is like the core thing that'll ultimately mean that Web3 applications like ours do overtake these Web 2, dinosaurs, where every single time they need to develop a new product or experience, that they have to go into an internal division, start a new division of the company to bring that online. Whereas every single time we want to do something in Oku, we go out there and we find a fantastic partner to work with it. So you have our swap interface, which is like our flagship functionality. We have 11 different, integrated swap routers, and the same thing with the bridging side. We have all the leading bridges in one spot. We have an on-off ramp. It's like, okay, instead of our team having to be experts at every single one of these things, it's a lot easier and a lot more effective for us to find the best infrastructure partners that exist and bring them into a single UI and say, let's let them focus on the infrastructure, the smart contracts, whatever their expertise is, and we'll let our expertise be actually stitching these things together and going with that DeFi Lego thesis. So that's really what is core to us. It's been a long road. I mean, when we launched Oku in what was July, almost 2 years ago, the first 6 months the platform did no volume. It was not a great UX. We launched that MVP. We were overly ambitious about the scope of features and functionality it wanted to provide, and took a long time until it got to a point where it was actually like something people wanted to use. We had no points, we had no token, we had no incentives. Like the only reason for someone to use Oku still today to use Oku is because they think it's actually a good and useful product for them. There's no other reason, which in this industry is a very hard way to get people to come use your platform when everyone else is trying to put something flashy in front of them. But in the long run, now the product is doing substantially more in volume every month, growing month over month. The users are much happier. We still have a long ways to go to get to the point where we're rivaling, the industry leaders, but we're like a real contender at this point, which is nice. It's taken us a long ways. Yeah, that's only like a tidbit on Oku. Obviously, there's a lot more we can unpack here through the rest of our time.
Yeah. So, and how big is GFX Labs? Because you mentioned that Coinbase 4,000, Binance 7,000. So, how big is your team that is, challenging those giants?
Yeah. So the total GFX team is 23 people. That being said, the Oku team is like a dedicated 16 inside of the company. I tell folks we have kind of two divisions inside of the company. We have the Oku side, which is some group of folks that are explicitly working on Oku and only Oku. And these days we have a few folks, a pod of 5 people who do non-Oku work, which is generally anything underneath the GFX umbrella, software consulting work, contract work, other development things, etc. Historically, through the bear market, what we did, because Oku for a long time wasn't generating a lot of revenue for us, and even today, it's grown a lot, but it's still not much in the grand scheme of things. This consulting stuff that's not super sexy or exciting has been our savior for funding the rest of the business, because we don't have big VC money. So not only are we not Coinbase and Binance with 6,000-7,000 people, we also don't have, the Andreessens or Sequoias of the world backing us, because building the next biggest trading interface, unfortunately, is not the most interesting thing like trying to launch a blockchain. So in hindsight, if we wanted to make the maximum amount of money as fast as we wanted to, we should have just launched a blockchain 3 years ago. But I think this is going to pan out much better in the long run for us.
So it's 16 brave coders that are fighting along those giants. Maybe this would be a good time, to, of course, together with this, a lot of talent in the internet that you can actually plug into your to your platform. So maybe this would be a good time for you to share the screen and show us, because it will be easier for us to later, especially for our viewers, later understand what are we talking about. If you could show us the actual platform and guide us through it.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so we have a pretty expansive platform here, so I'll try to keep it brief, and feel free to interject if you have any questions. But I'm on, this is the Oku landing page here. We're not ones that really believe in landing pages so much. We kind of just inject you straight into the application, because I get too tired of clicking the open app button on every single DeFi application in the space. In our mind, our UX needs to be intuitive enough that you already understand what we're offering and doing without having to, have a landing page in the first place. So our core functionality is just swap, bridge, and ramp here. Like I mentioned before, Oku has its meta-aggregator, which is our flagship. We're live across 34 blockchains today, which is a bit nuts. That number has well exceeded whatever I thought it was going to be once upon a time. And then most importantly, our front end has 0 fees on it. Revenue comes typically through working with chains and whatnot today. And then I'm connected with my regular dev wallet. So you're not going to see anything particularly interesting here in my trading history, but you have your full trading history here of what you've been doing, and it works through each chain. And if I come up in here and just say, hey, I want to swap some USDC over to Arbitrum tokens, I just pop in my 50. It's going to go out. It's going to fetch quotes from a bunch of different routes here. And what's kind of nifty too for these is you'll see that this little green icon here, this is just telling you, hey, you've already done an approval for these places, so feel free to execute that. And what I'll show you guys here. So if I click the swap button for OKX and say, hey, we want to do that, it's going to pop up a confirm in my wallet over here. Let's see here. I'm not logged into Rabby. It's not playing nice.
In the meantime, Getty, does this aggregate routes from the chain you're on, or would it also aggregate from different chains like via bridge?
Right now, it's just for the chain. So we have the bridge functionality if you want to do anything cross-chain. One of the things we have been talking about is, for some folks who are kind of agnostic to where they do the trade. Let's say you want to do ETH USDC. every single chain is going to have ETH USDC. It would be kind of fun if we got to the point where we could show folks, hey, if you were to execute this same trade over here, that you would see for whatever liquidity imbalance, you would get some premium or extra funds for doing that. That's something we want to do in the long run. I think it'd be great to offer. Not quite there yet, but someday we'll get there.
Yeah, I'm thinking particularly like for bigger sizes or pairs that do not have as much liquidity, say on one chain, but they do on another. Like in terms of slippage, that would be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we have up here, which is, I forgot I was on the 1BIP, we have a lot of folks that come and use Oku that do like stable sorts of trades, think like Tether USDC. And so you can actually, I think we're like the only platform that allows you to do like 1/100th of a BIP. Sorry, not 1,000th of a BIP. No, that was right. 100th of a BIP. So that way, like folks can like the most minimal slippage possible, which is kind of fun. And here, this should throw us our pop-up now. Okay, Rapid wants me to sign this real quick. In hindsight, I should have shared my whole screen. What's kind of nice though is down here in the history. So I just initiated this trade with OKX, and it's like, hey, it's going to pop up down here and this will show us the transaction hash. Anything you do in front of Oku across any of the chains will index and store, so you can come back here. We also have all the historical trading history for anyone that's done anything on Uniswap, period. But obviously a lot of our trades, like from our volume side of things, about 30 or 40% of our trades go direct to Uniswap. A lot of the routes, though, that the routers provide are typically just optimized Uniswap routes in other cases. So like the true Uniswap volume is definitely much higher than that, like 30% that it's going directly to the Uniswap router. But here, let me show you guys the Bridge UX too, because honestly, I think the Bridge UX sometimes is like our most interesting feature in Oku that a lot of folks like just haven't had a chance to test out or try yet. And that's what's really most impressive. So you can come over here. We integrate a bunch of different platforms here. So you're going to see Bungee and Li-Fi most particularly. Bungee's across this system, Li-Fi being Jumper. Those are the two leading aggregators in the industry. So we integrate these two aggregators. So kind of on the Bridge side, we're a bit of a meta-ag, but we also have a direct integration with dBridge across Stargate, Chainlink, Squid, Orbiter, Rhino's in here as well. Oracle's in here as well. And so what's nice is Bungee and Jumper aren't going to support all the chains that we support. Like they support many, but typically not 100% of them. So between their integrations, their cross-swap liquidity, the direct integrations, like you can go between, like the other day I had to move some funds between Polygon, ZK, EVM. And I was like, I have some coins over here. I need some money on BSC. And like, I came to Oku. I have no idea where I'm going to find a route to do that weird thing. And sure enough, like Oku found me a route for it. So that's really the problem we're trying to solve with this Bridge UX, is that there's so many different bridges. It's so overwhelming for users to know where to go to do what bridge. They can come into this UX and have it all here. And then for the pro users who really care about their history, this is every single bridge that you've done with these different platforms, regardless if you've actually done them in our interface. So what we've done is we've gone through and integrated all their different APIs, such that when a user connects their wallet here, we show you the full bridge history. So everyone, especially those pro DeFi users, at one point or another has been in the position of, well, shoot, I just bridged some funds to somewhere, but I don't exactly remember which chain it was, and I have my origin transaction, but I don't actually remember which destination it was going to. And so this history stuff comes in very handy there. We have some folks who really like this. So that's our Bridge UX. And then ramp is really fantastic as well. So this is our on-off ramp. We integrated this with Bridge back in the day. We haven't had a lot of folks use this, but it's fantastic for anyone who wants to do money movements with dollars or euros. As you can see here, we're charging nothing on the spread here. There's no sort of spread between USDC and USD. On the euro, there's a little bit for the FX if you're doing dollars to euro. And we'll be adding peso support here as well soon, and supporting folks down in Mexico with that as well. So this is really fantastic. We have a handful of users who use this on a very regular basis, but it's something that I wish more folks would check out, because when was the last time you saw a DeFi platform that had an on-off ramp natively integrated? This isn't some MooPay thing charging you 3%, right?
And what countries do you support with this on ramping?
We support everyone with the exception of like the OFAC nations. I think Bridge doesn't support China as well. There's a couple other ones that are carved out. There's also like a couple US states that aren't supported, like New York, for example, is not supported. But generally speaking, it supports pretty much everything. And you don't have to be an American to move dollars. So like we have Canadians on the platform who are moving dollars because they rather bank in dollars in Canada because the Canadian dollar is not doing so great. We've had folks who are in Indonesia who set up accounts elsewhere with American systems. As long as you're just on American rails, so FedWire, etc., you can use that system. And then same thing with the Euro system. You don't need to be necessarily European. You just need to have a European system, account and a bank to move euros to and from, and that's all on the SEPA rails.
Okay, but it's only USD or Euro, like no
USD
like
or
local
Euro.
currencies.
That's correct. And then the next one will be pesos.
Okay. Do you plan on expanding on other local currencies?
Yeah, we would like to. This is one of those things where it's like a difficult like chicken and egg problem where it's like until you have it, it's hard to get folks to like come and use it. And folks don't really want to come and use it until you have it. And it's kind of hard to understand exactly what the demand is. So I would be lying if I said this was a super high priority for us, but like the UX is here today for Europeans, at least for euros and dollars. And then I think pesos will have done probably by the end of the month.
Okay.
Yes, maybe. And basically, like if we were logged in here, I would just add my like bank details and I would get a wire by Bridge, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's really very intuitive. We don't store any of your data. The only data like GFX and Oku like has is your email address and your wallet address that you like use to log in and out of our website with. All of your personal identifiable information is kept on the Bridge side as them being the provider. We don't have access to any of that stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. That sounds
And
really
then our newest integration which is really exciting, is with Morpho. So like, we had Uniswap as our flagship DEX partner. Now we have Morpho as our flagship Barlen partner. We've launched with WorldChain and Corn. So like the WorldChain integration, particularly, we've been spending a lot of time on optimizing and getting that off the ground. It's been doing great. We have, $6 million in this RE7 vault over here, 6 million on the WLD. The USDC vault just crashed 20 million, which is great. Not a lot of Bitcoin activity occurring over here, but eventually we'll get that number up as well. And then the Smokehouse has been supporting the Corn folks, and that's really where the Bitcoin DeFi chain is happening. And we have users can come over here, quickly see what is available. They can filter by chains. They can say, hey, I only care about USDC, which these filters are going to become really helpful when we launch Ethereum and Base on this interface in the next couple of weeks as we expand to support more Morpho chains. And you'll be able to manage your positions down here at a glance, your borrow positions. I guess actually I don't have any with this wallet, and then some rewards. Yeah, so just super quick recap there. And then on the Uniswap side, of course, we've got a number of different things happening over here. Let me switch up. Hopefully this order book loads. This order book and Arbitrum has been a little glitchy lately, but we have your trading view in the middle here, watch list on the right, live trading history, your order history down here, and then your market and limit orders. Let me switch to another pool.
Limit orders on Uniswap. Like I feel fulfilled now.
Yeah, you can do limit orders on any pool. If you ever come across a pool that doesn't accept it, it'll just say it's not enabled. We have to enable them on a pool by pool basis for like anti-Sybil resistance. But feel free to shoot me a message. Anyone can, and I'm happy to enable it. But yeah, you can do limit orders on any single pool. This is managed. This is like the one piece of like functionality that we added on top of Uniswap. It's a completely trustless system for folks to do limit orders. It's great. I use it all the time. Yeah, it's a really lovely system live across all of our chains that we support here in Oku.
Yes, I mean, like I've been a dinosaur still, using Uniswap since the old days, and that's always something that bugged me. It's like, yeah, I can swap at any time, but what about like swapping at any price that I want without having to be there?
And then the even more exciting one that you'll really like then is our new advanced order types that are coming. So we're really soon going to be able to have bracket orders, stop loss orders, these things. So that's going to kind of be on like our pseudo intent system that we're publishing. We've been working on for so long, but it's finally coming out here in the next like week or something. But I've also been saying that for a while. So I think this time for real it's coming. That'll be really exciting for folks. That's going to go live on Optimism initially. And then we have our LP and UX too for Uniswap folks. Give this here. So let me scroll out here. So you can see like a liquidity graph here. We're looking at the WMATIC USDCE pool on Uniswap V3 on Polygon. You get a nice crisp view to see what liquidity is like. You can click and drag your position here. I can select a standard range as well. I can come down here and run a back test if I would like. You see how I would have performed, and I can also see my existing positions that I have open. So this is some weird creative thing that I had running, which is why it appears like Tether's there twice. One's a bridge Tether token. It's a weird thing. But yeah, so these are kind of like our main things. We have this pro page too. I can show that to you as well. So our pro page is kind of eventually where we want more folks to be doing trading, like kind of merging like your Gecko terminal kind of experience with our advanced order routing system. So you have your trading view chart, transactions relevant to the asset, your order history over here, your ability to trade. This is also where our new advanced order types are going to come in. So we're very excited about this UI. We've got to do some optimizing on this page. Is not exactly has the fastest load times these days, but you know, we're getting there.
Yeah, I feel like now seeing it, you know, seeing things as you're sharing your screen, I think it gets way better. This thing that you talked about earlier about those things building the things they're good at, and you kind of like bundling them together, which is what we're good at. Because I feel like all those things, it's not that, you know, the reinvention of the wheel, right? It's things that exist, but if you have used them in random places, like on their own island, it's way less intuitive than what it seems like using Oku. Like it brings everything in one place and makes it so it's intuitive to use.
By the way, can you can you expand on it a bit, especially for our listeners and viewers? Like, what exactly did you integrate, and how this worked together?
Sure. Yeah. So there's all sorts of different things happening here. I'll try to cover whatever I can. The first and most obvious example, since we're already on this page, is that you have the integrated order routers over here. So this is on Polygon, the available list of order routing systems. So we have to go in, we have to understand each of their APIs, integrate them into our central system. We have server side, a system that when the user requests a quote, it actually goes to the server goes out, fetches all these quotes based off of your preferences, brings them back, looks at them, serves them to the user. And then the one thing that I didn't show you guys earlier, but when a user goes to actually execute a trade inside of Oku, the order confirmation window will pop up, and it actually integrates Blockade. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Blockade, but they're one of the industry leading the security providers. Typically, where you'll see Blockade, most users will see Blockade, is integrated in like a MetaMask or one of their other like favorite wallets. And generally what the wallets will do is they'll pay them some money to say, hey, come in, I want you to simulate transactions that our users are going to execute. We have the really strong belief that it is not just the wallet's responsibility to be serving safe transaction data, that it's also up to the DApp to make sure that whatever data they're serving them. We integrate with so many other providers that we felt like, okay, we're getting a lot of call data sent to us. And while we build some aspects of that call data, trade routes is not one of those things that we do build. So we wanted to integrate Blockade to make sure that whenever user executes a quote in our platform, as long as Blockade supports that chain, which is they support many of the chains here, that quote's actually getting simulated. So kind of for the life cycle, it's like, okay, you have the order routers, you have Blockade, the user executes this, you have, of course, your regular Web3 modal stuff there, but even some extra things are happening. And then you have, the on-off ramp, right? I showed you guys. So, okay, now we have to integrate the whole Bridge API and build like the first ever like DeFi experience for a Bridge. We built that a long time before the acquisition on their end occurred, and before folks were talking about Bridge. And I looked around for a very, very long time to find the right on-off ramp partner there. You look at the Morpho UI, right? So we have to take the whole Morpho protocol, understand that, index that, You have to then serve it up there. Yeah, some of these things have SDKs, some of them don't. Sometimes the SDKs do and don't work. It's the same thing with Uniswap. So it's really like there's not a single page in this application that doesn't involve like more than 5 partners in order to like exist. I mean, I think a lot of companies say they have a lot of partners. In our instance, like we literally do. I mean, 34 chains, 12 order routing systems, 12 bridging systems. We've got chats with all of them. They're constantly telling us about their updates or downtime or whatever. It's quite the little game to manage, but it's a lot more efficient than trying to build it all yourself too.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask about this like cooperation between you. Like, is it like that you just integrate the things that they are building, or are they also somehow contributing to your product specifically?
Both. What I tell folks, and this is what I tell our team all the time, is everything we do has to be for the good of the team, the good of the user. But obviously that can mean a lot of different things. So in the instance of like, for example, like Kyber Swap or Odos or whatnot, like these guys pushing updates and whatnot, we're really keen to integrate those things because we send a lot of volume to those platforms. And because they are the best ones. And so in that instance, if they're doing something that's going to improve the user experience, let's do that. The other side of this, though, is like I mentioned, the interface doesn't have any fees on it today. And so we do have a couple of folks who are integrated on like the bridge page, for example, or the swap router side of things that have said, hey, Getty, we'd love to get integrated here where you have this new and fantastic technology, but we don't have a lot of eyeballs on us. You have users, you have trade volume. If you give us the ability to compete in here, we'll not only do a better job for the user and your user experience, but also, we'll give you a few dollars to, cover your development costs on integrating these folks. And so that's one of the key things for us as like a scrappy young team that we've had to do over time is try to find like win-win scenarios where we can support someone. Hopefully we can get a few dollars to cover development costs as we go on. And that works out for everyone. So there's a few different angles here, but yeah, to your point, lots of different ways to look at it.
Okay, I want to switch gears if that's okay, like go
Sure.
from Oku back to a bit more high level. So you I particularly know you, and I think that's the case like of working mostly with Uniswap, right? And
Yeah.
especially from the Oku side. And if I recall correctly, Oku was itself funded with like bootstrap with a grant from Uniswap Foundation, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And more recently, you had a proposal that unfortunately failed to meet quorum. But you are, and as you mentioned originally, GFX Labs is very active in Uniswap's governance. So I would like to know your perspective, like how you see working with Uniswap and Uniswap DAO in particularly as a builder.
Yeah, well, we've been engaged in protocol governance for a very, very long time. And as you mentioned, Oku was largely made possible originally through a grant from the Uniswap Foundation. We were, in fact, I think like one of the first grants that the foundation had made when it was getting started a long time ago. And there's two things I want to hit on here. Let me get to the first one about why we even do protocol governance in the first place, and then I'll cover the second question on Uniswap in particular, because I think this is the point where I don't know if everyone in protocol governance has had the experience we've had in a sense, like the really early days of like participating in these DAOs. When Compound launched its COM token, at the time it was still at the trading firm, and we were already in close conversation with their team. We'd give them suggestions here and there, but they were suggestions. At the end of the day, they didn't have to listen to them if they didn't want to. Come along comp token, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, if you have enough votes and you get enough people to agree with you, then you can affect change, regardless of what the team thinks. Hopefully the team agrees. And at the time, we were doing a lot of stuff around Wrap Bitcoin, or the old firm Grapefruit Trading. We were one of the largest Wrap Bitcoin minters, and we had quite a bit in Compound. And I was like, the collateral factor for this thing should be higher. And I asked the bosses if I could spend some time trying to lobby, folks into agreeing with us. And so I went and got like 100 comp tokens, made a small proposal, and started messaging people. No one at the time knew who our trading firm was, because we were very like under the radar. No, like our boss didn't want people to know that we really existed or did anything. B, I was just some kid. I mean, at the time, I'm like literally, I think I was 19 or 20 at the time. like no one had any reason to believe this random forum poster, but we wrote a good forum post. A bunch of people agreed with it, and we made a proposal. People voted for it, and it passed. And I was like, this is so cool. A bunch of strangers that I have never met before read my thoughts on this, agreed on it, and then came together and said, let's vote. And then once it was voted, it wasn't like, oh, okay, now we got to get the team to go do it. No. This vote went straight into production, and it just changed, and it was live. And I was like, this is the freaking coolest thing. Like, where else can you do this? Anywhere? Like, nowhere. It's completely like, this is why, in my mind, DAOs are so fantastic. And like over the last 4 years, we've spent a lot of time as a company betting on and spending our time participating in these DAOs, and frankly have been a bit saddened to see by the lack of progress in many ways in these things, despite many of our efforts. But that magical moment there is why we participate in DAOs at all, period. Because I do think that this is like one of the best inventions of our industry that has been terribly managed and executed upon over the last several years, but I think inevitably will pan out. But anyway, so to the question on the Uniswap side, we had been engaged there for a while. We were one of the core delegates. It was not hard to be one of the core delegates at Uniswap. We had some votes at the time, and no one was proposing anything. So I just started authoring stuff. And this is how we do things at GFX. We're like, someone should do this thing. We're like, can someone else do it because we're busy? Then no one else does it. We're like, okay, well, damn, I guess we got to go do it ourselves. And we go author the proposal. We post it. People are like, oh, this is a good idea. Put it up for a vote. Do that. Wait some time. Do it again. Repeat. There was a period in Uniswap governance back in the day where we were the only person proposing proposals for 9 months. And that's not to say that we were doing an exceptional job. That just means no one else was participating. So we were doing these things. The Uniswap Foundation, which was originally just a grants program, was getting started. They call us up and they say, hey, Getty, we're thinking about starting a foundation. That way we're like, there's a more dedicated organization. Like, this is great. Uniswap Labs has their own set of priorities. That's understandable, but we do need someone to look after the DAO. And so they are asking for this at the time. It was a huge amount of money, the most amount of money being asked by like pretty much any DAO. And I was like, well, what do you want to do with the money? And they were essentially like, well, what do you think we should do with the money? I was like, okay, I'll come back to you with some ideas. And so one of the 4 ideas we pitched to them was essentially like, at the time, Uniswap's market share was like 90% of overall DeFi market share. How do we get more? I mean, we actually don't need more DeFi market share. We need to compete with the CeFi platforms, of which we had like 1% market share of. And our whole argument to them was, forget the protocol optimization and trying to get liquidity. Our user experience sucks. Like, this is why people aren't using DeFi more, is the user experience sucks. So like, let us go focus and try to like reimagine from the ground up the Uniswap experience. And so that was ultimately the reason why they gave us the grant, and what we executed on, what we're still executing on. And I think in the scheme of the DAO, I mean, obviously we're biased, but I think we were probably one of the best investments the DAO has made to date, because in the scheme of things, DAO invested 1.6 million to make this thing initially happen. They already knew we were good participants, but they really know now. And then to date, our company has invested double that back into the product on our own. Like, it'll be triple here before we know it. Like, we've now spent a ton more money out. We've got a lot of other folks to believe in the same thesis. We brought in a ton of new chains. Yeah, so kind of like to answer the question specifically on like how the interactions gone with the Uniswap DAO, it's been interesting, I would say. Like, the DAO is a living organism, particularly in the state of like overall DAO governance. You have a lot of like student groups that participate, which is fantastic. But one of the downsides of student groups is that the students graduate and the students change. And so one of the hard things is you'll often build like rapport with a particular student in a group, and then they'll move on eventually, which makes sense. They're students, but that's kind of hard when we're dealing with these huge protocols that actually have a lot of value to control and to govern, and for a lot of real serious decisions to be made. And where in reality, we need some folks who are able to think a little more long-term, think a little more tangibly that investment side. And I think a lot of the stuff that we experience at Uniswap is not specific to us. I think in the grand scheme of things, you look at Arbitrum or Optimism and many of the other DAOs we participate in, it's very much the same problem set, where it's like, how do you get delegates to think more tangibly about the value, about the problem at the hand, and how to execute on this? How do you get folks' incentives aligned? It's a really challenging problem, but this is essentially the challenging problem of like running any company or organization or nonprofit. I mean, trying to get folks to have aligned interests is a really, really difficult thing. So that was a long rant of an answer that covered probably more than you'd intended, but we can take this any which way from here if you want.
Actually, I would like to dig deeper into this relationship with the DAO, because, like, you initially funded this thing, and then you worked with Uniswap Labs. But what other things are that you're working with this DAO, or maybe some other DAOs? And also, I would like to understand, like, how would it look like in a perfect world for you? Like, what was good about working with the DAO? What was maybe imperfect with working the DAO, and how should it be working in the perfect world?
Yeah, so I mean, generally we haven't worked a ton with the DAO around like the starting of Oku, like because the foundation initially funded this thing. When we had funded it with them initially, we had set up like weekly calls with them, and so like once a week we'd get on a call with the foundation and we'd be like, here's what we did last week, here's what we're going to do next week, repeat this for a long time until the thing launches essentially. And then after that point it was kind of like, okay, shake hands, best of luck to you. And we're like, okay, I think it would have been nice for us to have a little more overlap with the foundation. That's one of the things I've kind of like told them in the past, is that they invested all this time and money into us. They probably could have maximized this value to their degree a bit better. I think part of it is that's like they trust us with such a high degree and believe that we're going to do a good job at it. And they have so many problems and things that they want to solve that there's only so much time in the day. And so maybe in the scheme of things, spending more time with us is not the most valuable thing in their mind. Maybe that's the case. And then as far as the DAO side of it goes, we really started the expansion across multi-chain, because I was like, the DAO is not growing at this time. When we started, the platform went live in July of 2023, kind of by, it was January timeframe of 24, it was beginning to be very evident that we were losing market share, that there was this surge in new chains. Aerodrome was winning on base and going to new chains. We had Camelot and the underlying DEX there expanding to new chains. The V3 code was out and about, and essentially the genie was out of the bottle, and no one was really focusing on like the boots on the ground approach. And we said, let's take that on. And then the way in which we really worked with the DAO kind of ever since then was been with the Uniswap Accountability Committee, which is generally run by these two great guys, June and Abdullah, who I'm sure you guys both know. And they have really been like the DAO's like internal champion aside from the foundation. And that's kind of the entity that we end up working the most, because there's a group of 5 of them in there that we can talk about a chain expansion. They administer a lot of the incentive campaigns that the DAO has authorized, any other like funding payments to anyone. So they're kind of like they're the kind of the executing arm of the DAO, or like the DAO will vote on things, fund proposals, but you work with them. So we work with them on a ton of things. We also now have Alpha Growth, who does like marketing things, whatnot for the DAO. But aside from that, like then we have our proposal that we just put up, I guess like a month ago. We now have reproposed it, since you guys mentioned, it didn't reach quorum last time around. And this new proposal is really the first time we've come to the DAO and said, hey, can we have some additional funding for the purposes of growing the product? And that was to say like, hey, we have V4s live, Uni Chains live. Can you guys fund a small bit to add on really great V4 functionality? This is something I've actually was pitching to the Uniswap Foundation for a long time. And for whatever reason, they didn't want to do it as a grant. And we figured, we feel strongly enough about this. Let's put it in front of the DAO, because we feel like there's a few key holes in V4's go-to-market strategy and eventually like growth for the DAO that we think need to be addressed. And we have a lot of chains that are coming to us and asking us about what our V4 plans are and whatnot. So that's kind of the context on the grant there. Yeah.
And in terms of partnership and support from foundation or labs or the DAO, are there any other things that you are in need of, like for example promotion, BD, partnerships? Like how does work on those fronts look like?
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing is distribution by far. Like the number one thing that we spend a lot of our time on that's non-technical is getting new folks to come into the platform to discover it for the first time. Because even though it's it's growing, you can always say it could be growing faster, So, we have something like 400 to 500 like new wallet connects every single day to the platform. How to get to the point where that's like 1,000 every single day. And so that's one of the things that I think historically could have done better. This is one of the reasons why we were very supportive of Alpha Growth's proposal of like, I think the DAO needs a direct voice to market itself. I think Uniswap has historically had a lot of great ecosystem partners for a small period of time. And the reason why it's a small period of time is because eventually no one's there to actually support them. And so it's like, you go back in the day and like probably the most legendary one historically was like Revert Finance. Like these guys build like the pro interface for LP on Uniswap a long time ago, well before Oku existed. And, had tried to get grants, tried to get support. Like, well, Uniswap Labs is not exactly in an incentivized position to promote other ecosystem platforms, right? Because they want as many users as possible to only use their interface. Fair enough, right? They're a for-profit business, so are we. We're in the same boat where we want folks to come use our interface. So we're not exactly incentivized to go out and support, a competing front end like that. But the Uniswap Foundation should be, and so should some of these other organizations. But what's historically happened is that these things maybe get a little support here and there, and then it kind of dies out. And this is why I was like, it needs to be like a Twitter handle and some social handles that are controlled by like the DAO, and that these things focus on supporting ecosystem projects. Otherwise, what we're going to keep on seeing happening is either the foundation of the DAO funding or backing things, or people create things for the Uniswap, them get essentially like excluded from comms, and then feels though that to support their business and to grow, that they need to integrate competing DEX protocols. So now if you go to like any of these, like now I don't want to call them legacy, but other things that used to be strongly Uniswap affiliated things, they all include multiple other DEXs in them. I mean, the only reason we haven't done that is we felt that the investment and partnership we have with Uniswap is so significant that we don't want to jeopardize that. But I've had every single one of the major DEXs call us up and say, hey, Getty, can you integrate us? Can you do this? Can you do that? The Curve folks, we want a UI. Like, okay, all that stuff. I'm like, no, we're not doing it. It's just Uniswap for us. But that is probably, in my mind, one of the bigger non-financial problems with DAOs in general, is that how do you build this ecosystem and who's responsible for that and the execution of it and the alignment of incentives there.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've heard, especially like the distribution side. In previous episodes that we've done with other builders from other ecosystems, I think this is like starting to emerge as a theme that we see. Like protocols and applications need help, not because they are bad at it, but simply the ecosystems might be better positioned to do it from an audience perspective, or how big of an audience they have, like to just bring more users in and have this co-marketing kind of thing.
And how should they do it? Like if you were to advise them, if they wanted to do something like that and you were to advise them, how would you like them to do it? How would you like them to provide the support?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot easier than folks think it is. I mean, it's just a matter of let's get some comms of the leading ecosystem folks. Let's get those folks up on podcasts in front of the channels and whatnot, which is Alpha Growth is doing this. They've been running podcasts with the various folks in the ecosystem. I think maybe you guys were on one, or maybe you guys have. Yeah. So I think that sort of activity of like, let's make the list of everyone in the ecosystem, and we'll start just yapping about them. Like that right there would be such an upgrade to what is the norm of like just not talk about anything and just hope people find out random things. Like, because it's one thing when like our organization or new grantee says, oh, I'm got this grant from Uniswap, and everyone's like, okay, cool. But it's another thing when like the Uniswap handle is talking about you, and the reality is the Uniswap handle is not going to talk about any of this stuff. But maybe you can get a DAO, the Uniswap growth handle to talk about it. Maybe you can get the Uniswap Foundation handle to talk about it. If it's something that we've integrated into our platform, we'll absolutely talk about it. I mean, this is one of the things, you go through our Twitter account, all we do is talk about our partners and how whatever interesting things that they're launching, building, what we're integrating, etc. Because what are we but our ecosystem around us, right? So that's what I feel so strongly about it. And I wish more folks just got up and did the thing. I don't know why people don't just do it. I don't think it's complicated.
And what are the things that, like, if somebody is out there and would like to do something with Oku, what kind of partnerships are you looking for? What kind of builders would you like to partner with? And, what are the missing pieces in this whole puzzle that you would like somebody to solve so that you can integrate it?
Yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, obviously, like the easiest things, which aren't necessarily the most important ones, is like if you're a newer bridge or router that thinks you have a breakthrough or you're so much more efficient than everyone else, then like call us up, because you shouldn't have to worry about, as one of these infrastructure projects, finding users. You should just be worried about finding a platform that's to support you. That's the big thing that we believe in, is like, you're developing a new protocol and I don't also have to worry about marketing and distribution. Come to us. We'll work you through marketing and distribution. And as long as you have great technology, it's a win-win. Like, we want to serve that great technology, makes our product better, brings you users. It's a win-win. One of the, as far as like near-term things we're thinking about, though, is like on-chain market making. I think this is a big one that the Uniswap DAO should be focusing on. Like, I don't know why it historically hasn't been one we focused on. I think like supporting LPs and better LP tooling is something that the DAO should really be working on. That's something we would like to do. It's a little hard because like you can't make money on a lot of these things. So it's like, how do you incentivize actually building LP tooling? That really has to be something that the DAO drives, that the foundation drives. But I think that's, from a Uniswap DAO standpoint, should be the top priority. Other things that we're looking at quite regularly is like on-off ramp infrastructure. Like, I stay up to date on like all the on-off ramp infrastructure. A big reason why our on-off ramping is what it is today is because like we knew about Bridge well before most folks, but then also because I stay on top of everything else that's interesting and happening. There's a lot of advancements. I know people are excited about stablecoins. There's still a lot to come there until like you can get to the Coinbase experience. Like, part of what makes the Coinbase experience so magical is that they have like unlocked the on-off ramp experience so well. But they can only do that because they're a centralized entity. So to do that in DeFi context becomes a lot more difficult. That's something that we've been spending time on. And then less like pointed on a particular initiative, but we are hiring for a couple of roles on our team at the moment. We're hiring for a senior product designer, and we're also hiring for a more junior backend engineer, or something that we can look to foster and grow. So yeah,
that's a great segue. Christoph, you have something?
Yeah, one last thing. Like,
Yes.
if there is somebody who would like to partner with you guys, who should they contact? Like, is it you? Is it someone else? Should they write you an email? Should they contact you on Telegram? Like, how should they reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways you can contact me. My Twitter DMs are always open, and I do check them. You can ping the Oku DMs. We also have our like team at gfxlabs.io. If you're looking to apply to the company, careers at GFX Labs, or you can check out our Twitter profile on Oku, where we have the different jobs postings there as well. Also, I should obviously mention chains too. If you're a new EVM chain, particularly folks that I'm really curious about, anyone in the RWA space, we're spending a lot more time thinking about how we enable stocks, equities, commodities, any sort of like structured products, etc., coming on the platform. I'm a huge believer that this industry cannot keep trading meme coins and governance tokens forever, that we have to get to more tangible things. And in fact, I think it's going to be magical when this occurs, because we've gotten so good at creating liquidity for things that should not have liquidity, that if we applied like a modicum of effort to things that like actually have a board and revenue and a team and a product, that we could really do some awesome things. So that's a big thing, like that's a big macro focus for us. So anyone who's doing RWA things or interested in, like, if you're an issuer, etc., feel free to get in touch with us. We're getting in touch with a lot of folks and making that known, that even though we're Americans operating an American platform, that we're happy to work with people on that. I lost my train of thought there. Sorry.
Okay, basically, if anybody is doing anything that you just mentioned, they should reach out to you.
Yeah, reach out to me. You can join the Discord. We have support tickets built into Oku. That's another great thing, like our Mava integration there. So feel free to open a support ticket, Discord, Telegram. There's a million ways to get in touch with us.
Yeah, I'll include some of the links in the description of the video on YouTube, so people can easily find them.
Awesome.
Okay, and that's, I think, the segue I wanted to mention earlier is that what does the future of Oku look like? Like, where do you want to be in a year or 3 years from now?
Yeah, and it's a great question. We kind of look at goals in like 3 buckets. So near-term goal for us is to get to the point. We have a number of features coming out, so like the new advanced order types and a few other things. I would say the longest term goal, which is the most interesting, is like I really want to be extremely friendly with RWA assets. I want us to be seen as like the most friendly RWA platform, where if you want to trade a stock or commodity that like or your place to come do it, you can do everything here. You can on-off ramp the platform, you can do your trading for that, then you can lend it out in Morpho. Imagine if you're a user that wants to buy a S&P 500 index, you're going to onboard your cash, you're going to buy your S&P 500 index, you're going to click 2 buttons, you're going to borrow against it afterwards to fund your life. Now you have this investment that is an appreciating asset. You have this liability that's a depreciating asset, the dollar, and you can do that all through Oku, hopefully with very few clicks in a very intuitive manner where we can abstract away as much of the crypto logic as possible. So we're spending a lot of time also getting rid of transactions in the application, making wallets disappear into the background, just having social login, etc. So that's very much a long-term goals. Like, how can you forget crypto, this financial hub for all sorts of your actions well beyond it, and it all runs in this beautiful Web3 layer. But users shouldn't need to understand or look at any of that in my mind.
Yep. Yeah. Like more of abstraction kind of thing.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what you'd expect of Coinbase, right? Like, we shouldn't do anything in the user experience that you wouldn't feel like, forget Coinbase, Apple wouldn't do, right? Like, this is one of the big things, like on the on-off ramp, we have so many folks who are like, oh, you can just embed our on-off ramp with like a simple pop-up modal. I'm like, my guy, if you're using Apple's website and they throw a pop-up at you to like PayPal's website, you're going to just be so confused. Like, that's not what you would expect from like the top tier design quality. So why should we hold ourselves to any other bar than that?
Yeah, fair point.
Absolutely.
All right, I think that brings us to the end of today's episode, unless, of course, there is any other question that Crystal would like to throw out, or any remark that you, Getty, would like to bring up.
If you have any uni, if you're listening to the podcast here and you have any uni, feel free to delegate to us at gfxlabs.eth. We also have a proposal up right now, or if any other coins on Optimism or Arbitrum as well. We're also delegates in those places too.
Perfect. Crystal?
Awesome. Yeah, so I hope that we'll be able to come back maybe to discussion half a year from now, and see what from this future that you just explained actually realized.
Yeah, we would love to. That'd be great.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Getty, for being on. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure looking at Oku as well. So yeah, thank you for being here. Thanks to everyone else for listening, and see you at the next one.
Fantastic.
Thank you.